Welcome back. It's time for the Roundtable, and this week we brought in two of the top minds in Washington business to tell us what to expect from our region's newest elected officials, plus the latest on DC's bid for the 2024 Olympics. Joining us today, Jim Dinegar, President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade, and Doug Fruehling, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Business Journal. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Doug, first I have to start with you. Congratulating Women Who Mean Business. You just unveiled this year's class, and it's an outstanding class of top women. We've even had a few on the show, so well done to you.
We had a great event this week, and they all came out, and all the information's on our website.
Well, they do mean business. So let's talk about another woman who means business. DC has a new mayor, and there are lots of challenges and lots of opportunities that face her. Because we have two great minds, I'm going to ask each of you, what are the two top things that Muriel Bowser promised businesses she would do during the election that you actually think she might be able to pull off?
Well, I'm not sure Muriel promised much during the election.
To the business community.
To the business community. She focused a lot on ethics reform and things like that, which is great for the city. You know, her big challenges she faces are the soccer stadium. She's got to figure out what to do with that and whether to push that, and the streetcars. She's got to figure out, once H Street gets going, what to do with the rest of the streetcar plan.
Jim, we heard a lot of talk about proposals for taxes in the last city council year. We heard a lot of talk about what they need to do to be a more business-friendly city. What did you hear from Muriel Bowser that you think she needs to follow through on when it comes to the business community?
Well, first, certainly being ethical. There's been a cloud over the District of Columbia for the last 4 years. Remove that cloud and give and restore confidence in people willing to invest in the district, invest in the region. So I would say that's certainly job one. She does have to address the affordability of housing and then also the homeless situation in the District of Columbia. People need places to live, people need places to sleep, and it's a travesty in the District of Columbia that that's the case, certainly in the homeless shelters. So that's certainly has implications for the business community, but overall for the perception of business and quality of life in the district, those are two top items.
Let's pivot and look at Maryland, because we were here on election night with former Governor Bob Ehrlich, very close to Larry Hogan. He was hopeful but not convinced they were going to pull it off. At one point in the night, he was more convinced Ed Gillespie was going to pull it off than Larry Hogan, but he did. He made a lot of promises when it comes to business, taxes, the economy. What are, I'm going to ask you two top for him, but first let's two top things Larry Hogan promised the business community that he needs to fulfill.
Well, really, he ran on one issue. It was repealing the 20 or 40 tax increases from the O'Malley era, and that was his main issue. And you know, if you ask me what he can do and what he can't do, it's going to be both of those. He can repeal some of them. There are even Democrats who realize that the tax burden in Maryland has gotten too big for businesses and in general. So he will be able to do some of that, but there is no way, facing a deficit like the state is, that he is going to make all those promises and all those taxes are going to go away. It's just not going to happen.
Jim, I was so intrigued by that race that I listened to some of the political analysts based in Baltimore, the African American community, and African American voters in Baltimore said they never really felt like they knew Anthony Brown, and they said he lost all credibility when he promised no new taxes, because they felt like you couldn't do that in a state that's facing so many different deficit pressures. Talk about those promises Larry Hogan made. Which of those taxes would the business community most like to see done away with, and which do they think may be here to stay?
Well, I will say that I think Lieutenant Governor Brown underestimated the concerns associated with the economy, the number of regulations and tax increases, and that it did keep businesses from thinking about Maryland. Larry Hogan gets that, and I will have to say that he's got his hands full with the legislature, but he's going to have to develop good relationships with the legislature to get anything and everything done. If he's going to reduce the regulations, if he's going to reduce the taxes, it can't just be done by fiat. He needs to work with the legislatures, and you can't just go, oh, we're going to be business friendlier, and so come on and do business here. It's going to be a series of lots of things all knitted together, and certainly working with the legislator to make that happen is going to be critical.
But businesses also don't like to see large deficits, and we're seeing growing budgetary pressures in Maryland. If you sat down with him tomorrow, would you cite specific taxes that you would say focus on those first? And are there certain ones you would say leave alone?
Well, you know, we hope to be advising him on a number of things. So go first, sit down with McCormick Spice. You can't let them leave Baltimore, much less Maryland. They're a Baltimore, Maryland company, and so that would be a signal. When you start to sit down with the companies that are there that have taken good care of Maryland over the years, take good care of them, Marriott, Lockheed, Under Armour, and the rest. I'd also say on those taxes, you can cut some taxes that will generate some growth, sends the right signal to go reinvest. They have to lower energy costs. They have to do something to spur the development on cyber and more technology and feed that beast. I will also say, though, that sounding somewhat counterintuitive, you have to invest in the Purple Line and the Red Line in Baltimore. Those are economic engines. We see it with the Silver Line now. Those are long-term investments that if there's any delay on them will really throw a wet towel on development in the state of Maryland.
I think partially, Doug, the business community is still just getting over the shock of Larry Hogan getting elected, and some of them wishing they had gotten on board sooner. What's another takeaway from that election that people should be paying attention to?
Well, symbolically, it's huge. You know, we had when Ehrlich was elected, that was a surprise, not quite as much of a surprise, but to have another Republican governor, and he was able to accomplish a lot. But he also had a lot more political experience, I think, than Larry Hogan, and so it's going to be interesting to watch sort of this unknown character, whether he can have the sway that you need in Annapolis and with the business community to make a difference.
Before I give Jim the last word on this, because I've been the naysayer all along on the Olympics, I said it's not going to happen, so why should we even talk about it? He's proven me wrong. We're one of the top 4 finalists in the nation. How do you rate our chances of actually getting the Olympics?
I still rate our chances as great. I think we're the leading the leading USC.
Why?
Because of you look at the history of where it's been before and what we have to offer and what we could offer without building a whole lot more. We have a great infrastructure here. We would have to build a little, but we wouldn't have to reinvent the city.
Are you convinced that advantages outweigh the disadvantages?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, that's where you've had to win me over, Jim Dinegar. I have been a naysayer on costs. You're starting to win me over on that front as well. Make the case for our audience that you've made the case to me and other leaders in the city, because a lot of business leaders are following your lead now and on board. We had Russ Ramsey on, Ted Leonsis, all of the people fighting for this. What are you telling people as to why the advantages outweigh the disadvantages?
Well, first, I think we have a very strong board that's been put together to make this effort happen in the Greater Washington region.
Very impressive board.
In 2024, when the Olympics come to Greater Washington, it'll be almost 30 years since the Olympics have been held in the United States. Well, we're home to the biggest funders, Visa or Hilton or Mars Corporation. All of the big funders are U.S. companies. Beyond that, when you start to look at the Greater Washington region, LA's had it twice. A third time, kind of, it becomes the default Olympics place. We should host it. We've got wonderful venues. This is our time.
It's our time. Jim Dinegar, Doug Fruehling, thanks for joining us. 2 of my favorites on Washington Business Report.